Here we go. Winter Olympics, hockey, one of the sports there. This quote is apropos for a number of reasons and relates to a question that has been coming up from a lot of our LeadDeck Founders Club members. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. How does that relate to us? Most of us just need to commit to taking more shots, just asking more people, buyers, sellers, whatever. The more we ask, the more conversations or conversation opportunities that creates. The more conversation opportunities, the more opportunities there are to ask the next question, which I'm finding that more and more of the people that we're helping, they're fixing one problem, meaning they're having more conversations, which we have to have more of if we want to write more contracts and close more transactions. There's no getting around that. We have to have more conversations. And yet, we still have to ask to have the opportunity to write the contract to close the transaction. So I want to take a minute, share some simple phrases that might help you if you're stuck and you don't know what to do next or what question to ask next. You have buyers in one hand and you have sellers in another hand, but you're not matching them up. We're not writing contracts. So what can we ask or what phrases can we use to open the door to the contract, to take the shot? And I want this to be an open mastermind. So drop them in the chat or open your lines. I'll start, and I have others, but I use different language than some of you. And I know in looking here, we have a great deal of experience on the line. Notice I use the word experience, okay? We have people here that have been licensed a lot longer than I have. And at this point, it's crazy to me to think that I think January 1st of 2027 will be my 20th year. It's insane. That's just being licensed. I was doing deals 3 years before I even got licensed. Number one, would you be totally opposed to? Hey, James, would you be totally opposed to looking at an offer on your property at street address? Hey, James, would you be totally opposed to getting that property on the open market using our 7-day stress-free home sales? Hey, James, if I brought you a good deal, would you be totally opposed to making an offer on it this afternoon? Whatever. When you flip it, instead of going for the yes, you go for the no, meaning I wouldn't be totally opposed to that, right? And we're not asking for a yes. We're just asking for anything other than a hard no. Anything other than a hard, nah, not interested. At what number would you be interested? At what number would you be a seller? At what number would it make sense for you? Hey, James, at what number would this property be a good deal for you? At what number would it make sense for us to go ahead and write up an offer on this? I'll even ask this to agents I did this yesterday. I have a listing that is a fixer-upper. And also, the pipes just froze. Not this past weekend, the weekend before. I got my big sign out there, and a guy calls and is like, hey, are you the listing agent on this property on the High Street in Duncana? I'm like, yeah, what's up? I think you got a problem. I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? There's like a giant icicle down the front of the house. And I was like, great. So I called Danny. Hey, Danny, I think we got a problem. He's like, what are you talking about? That can't be. We got the heat on. I was like, look, I'm not there. I'm just relaying the message. I can't get there till this afternoon. In the meantime, he figures out, yeah, that's what happened. Anyway, we still had a showing last weekend, and the feedback was that their client was somewhat interested. Yesterday, I asked her, at what number would it make sense for your client? Let's write it up and see where he's at. Let's just see what we can make happen. At what number would it be a no-brainer for you to go ahead and get this property on the market and move south where it's warmer? I think we're supposed to get 40s here later this week. That'll feel like 80. What are some other phrases that you all have used or found helpful in transitioning, in getting people to the next step, to get them beyond the indecision phase?
What happens if you don't sell?
Okay, yeah, okay. What happens if you don't sell, find another deal, whatever? There's any number of ways that you could frame that.
Ellipsis.
Yeah. What else? There are other great phrases. I ran out of time. What I was hoping to have done before hopping on here is reviewing exactly what to say. Is that what it's called? Exactly what to say for real estate agents. It's a black book. There are great phrases and verbiage and terminology in there that you can all use. Tomorrow morning, I'll have it. I've just been scrambling, and even I think I was a couple minutes late to even start this because I've been in full scramble mode, but that is a great book. And there are lots of great phrases, scripts, templates that you can use in there. I found, for me personally, this phrase, pivoting from institutional or portfolio buyer offers to getting it on the open, I have used that over and over again successfully. And that is a question that comes up often, like, how do you pivot from these offers to this? Because for most people, the institutional cash offers or the portfolio buyer offers, like your local buyer offers, for most people, they're not going to make sense. 3 to 5% of them, 3 to 5% of the homeowners or property owners, absentee owners, whatever, you get to raise their hand. 3 to 5% of them, one of those portfolio or institutional buyers is going to make sense for, which means 95 to 97% of them are going to be better served by going on the market. But if you're just saying, would you be totally opposed to listing your property? Even if you said, you'll get some less yeses. But if you say, would you be totally opposed to getting would you be totally opposed to getting your property on the open market using our 7-day stress-free home sale system? Question mark. If they've already indicated some desire or motivation to sell, you're going to get a pretty good percentage of them to answer, no, I wouldn't be totally opposed to that. And they might say, what would that look like? How does that work? That's just taking a little crack in the door and opening it wide open for you. I'm so glad you asked. Let me explain exactly how that would work. And for those of you wondering, okay, then what? Then what? And I've been thinking a lot about this. Listing presentations, in my opinion, are nonsense and a very tired, outdated concept. What has worked incredibly well for me is listing proposals. And you say, oh, were you just using semantics? No, a presentation is about you. At least most of the listing presentations that I've ever seen are more about you. This is what we'll do for you. It's what you're going to do for them, maybe semantics, but a listing proposal is specific to them. What I mean is, I get somebody that says, what does that look like? Or how would that work? Or what would the next steps be? I put together a proposal specific to their property. This is how we're going to market your property. Here's how we're going to find the ideal buyer for your property. And here's the timelines that will follow to make that happen. And while that might sound like a lot of work, if you use AI, you can, generally speaking, put together really good looking individual proposals for potential listings in 3 to 5 minutes. 3 to 5 minutes.
Gamma is probably the best tool we have ever used for that. You can get all of your prompts from ChatGPT for everything that you need for your ICPs and all the data that you need from your MLS. But I'm telling you, what Gamma does for those presentations is just incredible. And it is fast, very fast.
Love it. Love
Have
it.
you used Gamma yet?
I haven't been using it because I haven't needed to. And I'm like, I don't want to learn a new tool right this second. I definitely will. What I have been using is Notebook LM. So my process, if I get someone who I say, hey, Doreen, would you be totally opposed to getting this thing on the open market using our 7-day stress-free home sale system? Yeah, I'm not totally opposed to that. What would that look like? Perfect. I'll get a proposal together for you and over this afternoon. For me, what I do is I record a Loom video walking through exactly what we're going to do and the timelines for each of those things. I take the transcript, I pop it into Notebook LM. Previously, I've also used Manus. You can use Gamma. Use whatever. It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter, other than you've taken the time to put together an organized, thoughtful plan or a proposal for their property. Not, this is my 189 point whatever with marketing plan or listing plan or whatever. I'm not saying anything against them, but that is a generic solution. I'll give you a very specific real world example, and I got to keep this one short. So I'm going to wrap this part of the cafe up and then some updates, and then it's going to be short and sweet today. I have a listing that is going on the market coming soon later this week and live next week. It was an expired listing. When I met with them to take the listing, so I had 2 appointments with them. The first appointment, I would say I maybe was the favorite, maybe, but I do actually think that they were still undecided on who their favorite was. Let me say this. I think the husband had me as the favorite. The wife was undecided. Let me say it that way. Because the husband is the one that I had been, somehow or another, he got in my bold trail. So he's been getting my market updates. He's been getting the emails that I scheduled out yesterday, my monthly home value update that has offer options, et cetera. He's been getting those. So in his eyes, I was probably a slight favorite. The wife was undecided. So when I went out the second time, which is basically the second time I met with them, was to determine, like, when are we doing pictures? When are we doing Matterport? And when are we coming soon? And when are we live on the market? She tells me at the very end, here's why I wanted to go with you. Joe was already, he was sold. When we met with you the first time, you told us exactly who the 2 potential buyer avatars were for the property. When we asked the other people that interviewed, they had no idea. Their answer to that question was, we're a big punk company and we have a lot of reach. So I told them very specifically the 2 potential buyer avatars, and I told them who they are and how we're going to get the property in front of them. So it wasn't just, here's who I think they are, here's how we're going to get that in front of them. I did 0 presentation with them. There was no presentation. I didn't have. Now, I'm not saying I wasn't prepared, but there was no presentation. In fact, I don't know that I've ever actually given a listing presentation. I've had one. I've taken one with me. I don't know that I've ever actually used that. And yet, I know some of you use that and swear by it and whatever. I'm just saying, from my perspective, what is most effective is a proposal specific to their property and what you're going to do. And even if what you're detailing is the same as what your competitor is going to do, by you detailing it, demonstrating it, and communicating it, you will likely win that business because they're likely not going to do that.